5 and read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes aloud, because I'm currently reading it and I figured why not read it aloud, practice just yapping, and people can join us if they can. I'm having fun with this, so yeah, I don't feel like anyone's gonna join, but that's fine. I'm on chapter 9. When they reached the apartment, the grand man took one look at him and suggested a nap before supper. He fell on his bed, feeling too stressed to ever sleep again. The next thing he knew, Tigers was gently shaking his shoulder. A tray on his night table gave him a comforting smell of noodles, gave off the comforting smell of noodle soup. Sometimes the butcher would give her chicken carcasses for free, and she'd boil them into something wonderful. Corio, she said, Satyria has called 3 times, and I can't think of any more excuses. Come on, eat some supper and call her back. Did she ask about Clementia? Does everyone know? He blurted out. Clementia de Vicote? No. Why would she? Tigers asked. It was so awful. He told her the story in all its gory detail. As he spoke, the color left her face. Ugh, I gotta sit back for this one. As he spoke, the color left her face. Yeah, that's how I reacted to this. Dr. Gall made the snakes bite her? Over a little white lie like that? She did, and she didn't care at all whether Clemmy survived, he said. Just shooed me out so she'd get her afternoon snack. That's sadistic. Or completely demented, said Tigress. Should you report her? To who? She's the head game maker, he said. She works directly with the president. She'll say it was our fault for lying. Tigers thought it over. All right, don't report her or confront her. Just avoid her as much as possible. That's pretty hard as a mentor. She keeps showing up at the academy to play with this rabbit mutt and ask a lot of crazy questions. One word from her could make or break my prize. He rubbed his face with his hands. And Arachne's dead, and Clementia's all full of venom, and Lucy Gray, well, that's another really awful story. What the hell was that? Lol. That's another really awful story. I doubt she'll make it to the games, and maybe that's for the best. Tigers tucked a spoon into her hands. Eat your soup. We've gotten through worse than this. Snowlands on top? Snowlands on top, he said, with so little conviction they had to laugh. It made him feel a bit more normal. He took a few bites of soup to please her, then realized he was starving and made short work of it. When Satyria called again, he almost launched into his confession, but it turned out all she wanted to do was ask him to sing the anthem at Arachne's funeral in the morning. Your heroics at the zoo, combined with the fact that you're the only one who knows all the words, made you the faculty's first choice. I'd be so honored, of course, he replied. Good. Satyria slurped something, causing the ice to clink in her glass, then came up for air. How are things with your tribute? Coriolanus hesitated. To complain might seem childish, like he couldn't handle his own problems. He almost never asked Satyria for help, but then he thought of Lucy Gray buckling under the weight of her chains and threw caution to the wind. Not well. I saw Lucy Gray today, just for a minute. She's very weak. The capital hasn't fed her at all. Since she left District 12? Why, that's been, 4 days? Satyria asked, surprised. 5. I don't think she's going to make it to the Hunger Games. I'm not even going to have a tribute to Mentor, he said. A lot of us won't. Well, that's not fair. It's like telling you to do an experiment with broken equipment, she responded. And now the games will be delayed at least another day or 2, she paused and added. Let me see what I can do. He hung up and turned to Tigris. They want me to sing at the funeral. She didn't mention Clementia. They must be keeping it a secret. Then that's what you do too, said Tigers. Maybe they'll pretend the whole thing didn't happen. Maybe they won't even tell Dean Highbottom. Where is my water? Drink water, everyone. Go drink water. Also, I just realized I have no idea if I actually have the rights to read this book on a live stream, but Suzanne Collins, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, just go get this book. I actually have no idea if I can legally do this. I mean, I'm promoting her book, right? Alright, well, I guess this is more of a ask for forgiveness situation later if things go wrong. But also, there's nobody on here, and I don't even make money from YouTube anyway, so we're fine. Anyways, where even was I? Let me see what I get. He hung up and turned to Tiger. Oh, yeah. Maybe they won't even tell Dean Highbottom, he said, brightening. Then another thought hit him. Tigress? I just remembered. I can't really sing. And somehow this was the funniest thing either of them had ever heard. Excuse me. The grandmam, however, thought it was no laughing matter, and the following morning she had him up at dawn so she could coach him. At the end of every line, she'd poke him in his ribs with a ruler and shout, "Breathe!" until he couldn't imagine making any other choice. For the third time that week, she sacrificed one of her darlings. One of her darlings to his future, pinning a light blue rosebud to his carefully pressed uniform jacket and saying, "There, it matches your eyes." Looking sharp, with a belly full of oatmeal and a rib cage dotted with bruises, reminding him to inhale, he set off for the academy. Although it was Saturday, the entire student body reported to homeroom before they assembled on the front steps of the academy, divided neatly and alphabetically by class. By virtue of his assignment, Coriolanus found himself in the front row with faculty and distinguished guests. First and foremost, President Ravenstill. Satyria gave him a quick overview of the program, but the only thing that stuck in his head was that his rendition of the anthem opened the ceremonies. He didn't mind public speaking, but had never sung publicly before. There was little occasion to in Panem. It was one reason that Lucy Gray's song had caught people's attention. He calmed his nerves by reminding himself that even if he howled like a dog, there wasn't much to compare him to. Across the avenue, the temporary stands set up for the funeral procession quickly filled with mourners dressed in black, the one color everyone could be counted on to have, given the loss of loved ones during the war. He looked for the cranes, but couldn't spot them in the crowd. The academy and the surrounding buildings were festooned with funeral banners and sported Capitol flags in every window. Numerous cameras were positioned to record the event, and multiple Capitol TV reporters streamed live commentary. Coriolanus thought it was quite a display for Arachne, disproportionate to both her life and death, the latter of which could have been avoided if she'd restrained from being such an exhibitionist. So many people had died heroically in the war, with so little recognition that it grated on him. He was relieved that he was singing, instead of having to praise her talents, which, if memory served, were limited to being loud enough to fill the school auditorium without a mic and the ability to balance a spoon on her nose. And Dean Highbottom had accused him of showboating. Still, he reminded himself she was practically family. The academy clock struck 9 and the crowd fell silent. On cue, Coriolanus rose and walked to the podium. Satyria had promised accompaniment, but the silence stretched so long he actually drew breath to begin the anthem before a tiny version began to play over the sound system. Or tinny version, not tiny, there's two ends. Tinny version began to play over the sound system, giving him 16 measures of introduction. Gen of Panem, mighty city, through the ages you shine anew. His singing was more like sustained talking than a melodic tour de force, but the song was not particularly challenging. The high note the grandmam consistently missed was optional. Most people sung it an octave lower. With the memory of her ruler prodding him, he sailed through it, never missing a note or running out of breath. He sat to generous applause and an approving nod from the president, who now took the podium. 2 days ago, Arachne Crane's young and precious life was ended, and so we mourn another victim of the criminal rebellion that yet besieges us. The president intoned. Her death was as valiant as any on the battlefield, her loss more profound as we claim to be at peace. But no war will exist while this disease eats away at all that is good and noble in our country. Today we honor her sacrifice with the reminder that while evil exists, it does not prevail. And once again, we bear witness as our great capital brings justice to Panem. The drums begin to slow, deep boom. Oh, I read that wrong. The drums begin to slow, deep boom. I thought it was like an onomatopoeia there or something. No. The drums began a slow, deep boom, and the crowd turned as the funeral procession rounded the corner onto the street. Although not as wide as the Corso. Excuse me, y'all, it's late. Anyway. Although not as wide as the Corso, Scholars Road easily held the honor guard of peacekeepers, standing shoulder to shoulder, 20 wide and 40 deep, that stepped in flawless uniformity to the rhythm of the drums. Coriolanus had wondered about the strategy of telling the districts about a tribute killing a capital girl, but now he saw the point. Behind the peacekeepers came a long, flatbed truck with a crane affixed to it. High in the air, the bullet-ridden body of the District 12 girl, Brandy, dangled from its hook. Oh my gosh. Shackled to the truck bed, looking utterly filthy and defeated, were the remaining 23 tributes. Oh my gosh. The Okay, well, that was certainly interesting. Why am I like worried? Okay. Anyways, my anxiety is kicking in. Ha ha ha. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, the tribute shackled to the truck bed. The length of their restraints made it impossible to stand, so they either crouched or sat on the bare metal floor. This was just another chance to remind the districts that they were inferior and that there would be repercussions for their resistance. He could see Lucy Gray trying to hold on to a shred of dignity, sitting as upright as the chains would allow and gazing straight ahead, ignoring the corpse swinging gently over her head. But it was no use. The dirt, the shackles, the public display, it was too much to overcome. He tried to imagine conducting himself under those circumstances until he realized. Oh, that's funny. Anyway, sorry, just saw the message. We're good. Anyway, um, yeah. Anyway, he tried to imagine conducting himself under those circumstances until he realized this was undoubtedly what Sejanus was doing and snapped out of it. Yikes. Okay. Also, I don't know if I'm pronouncing these names right, but I'm trying. Another battalion of peacekeepers followed the tributes, paving the way for a quartet of horses. They were decked in garlands and pulled an ornate wagon with a pure white coffin draped in flowers. Jeez. Behind the coffin came the cranes, riding in horse-drawn carriages. At least her family had the decency to look uncomfortable. The procession halted when the coffin drew up to the front podium. Dr. Gall, who had been sitting next to the president, approached the mic. Coriolanus thought it was a mistake to let her speak at such a moment, but she must have left the crazy lady and her pink snake bracelets at home, because she spoke with a stern and intelligent clarity. Arachne Crane, we, your fellow citizens of Panem, vow that your death will not be in vain. When one of ours is hit, we hit back twice as hard. The Hunger Games will go forward, with more energy and commitment than ever before, as we add your name to a long list of the innocent who died defending a righteous and just land. Your friends, family, and fellow citizens salute you and dedicate the 10th Hunger Games to your memory. This girl is like 16. Anyway, so now that loudmouth Arachne, bitch! Okay. So now that loudmouth Arachne was a defender of a righteous and just land. Yes, she laid down her life taunting her tribute with a sandwich, thought Coriolanus. Maybe her gravestone could read, casualty of cheap laughs. Jesus. Oh my gosh. row of peacekeepers in red sashes lifted their guns and sent several volleys over the procession, which then rolled down a few blocks and disappeared around a corner. This is crazy. And the sad thing is I can see this happening in a not so distant future. But we're not going to get into that right now. As the crowd thinned, several people took the pained look on Coriolanus' face as sorrow at Arachne's death, when ironically he felt like killing her all over again. Oh! Still, he felt he'd handled himself well, until he turned to find Dean Highbottom looking down at him. "My condolences on the loss of your friend," the dean said, and on your student. It's a difficult day for all of us, but the procession was very moving," Coriolanus replied. "Did you think so? I found it excessive and in poor taste," said Dean Highbottom. Taken by surprise, Coriolanus let out a short laugh before he recovered and tried to look shocked. The dean dropped his gaze to Coriolanus' blue rosebud. "It's amazing how little things never change. After all that killing, after all the agonized promises to remember the cost, after all that, I can't distinguish the bud from the blossom." He gave the rose a tap with his forefinger, adjusting the angle, and smiled. "Don't be late to lunch. I hear we're having pie." The only good thing about the encounter was that it turned out that there really was pie, peach this time, at the special buffet in the school dining hall. Unlike on the day of the reaping, Coriolanus loaded his plate with fried chicken and took the largest wedge of pie he could find. He slathered his biscuits with butter and had 3 refills of grape punch, filling the last glass so much it spilled over, and he stained his linen napkin sopping it up. Let people talk. The chief mourner needed sustenance, but even as he ate, he recognized it as a sign that his usual gift of self-control was eroding. He blamed it on Dean Highbottom and his continual harassment. He's like Coriolanus is like complaining about starving, but then he has like these lavish lunches. I'm like you're surviving. He's getting 2 solid meals a day. Like, bro is not starving. So interesting. He's such an interesting guy. Anyway. What was he battling on about today anyway? Buds, blossoms? He should be locked up somewhere, or even better, deported to a far-off outpost to leave decent capital people in peace. Holy shit. Okay. Just the thought of him sent Coriolanus back for more pie. Okay, what? How is Coriolanus different than any... I honestly think Dean Highbottom... Okay, Dean Highbottom did make the Hunger Games. But he did seem like he was, like, kind of, like, uncertain about it. Like, he was like, it was theoretical. But then Dr. Gall kind of took it and made it a thing. And he was like, no. Like, it was just kind of theoretical. I don't know how much I hate Dean Highbottom. Because also, Coriolanus is a bitch. You know? Like, he is fucking mean. I don't know. To his classmates, he just seems kind of insensitive and really selfish, and I don't know. Anyways. Sejanus, however, poked at his chicken and biscuits without taking even one bite. If Coriolanus had disliked the funeral parade, it had to have been a misery for Sejanus. "They'll report you if you throw out all that food," Coriolanus reminded him. He wasn't crazy about the guy, but he didn't particularly want to see him punished. "Right," said Sejanus, but he still seemed unable to down more than a sip of punch. As the luncheon was finishing up, Satyria gathered the 22 active mentors to inform them that not only were the Hunger Games still on, they were supposed to be the most visible yet. With this in mind, they were to escort their tributes on a tour of the arena that very afternoon. The arena. Interesting. So they're... Okay. It was to be aired live to the entire country, somehow driving home the resolution Dr. Gall had made at the funeral. The head game maker felt that separating the capital kids from the district ones suggested weakness, as if they were too afraid of their enemies to be in their presence. The tributes would be handcuffed, but not fully shackled. The peacekeepers' top sharpshooters would be. Fuck, I keep yawning! Would be among their guards. But the mentors were to be seen side by side with their charges. Coriolanus could sense some reluctance among his classmates. Several of their parents had lodged complaints about shoddy security after Arachne's death, but no one spoke up, none of them wanting to seem cowardly. The whole thing seemed dangerous and ill-advised to him. What would prevent other tributes from turning on their mentors? But he'd never say so. I feel like I'm hearing like a... Y'all, I'm actually going crazy. Anyway. A part of him wondered if Dr. Gall was hoping for another act of violence so she could punish another tribute, maybe a live one this time in front of the cameras. This further display of Dr. Gall's callousness made him feel mutinous. He glanced over at Sejanus's plate. All done? I can't eat today, said Sejanus. I don't know what to do with this. Their section had emptied. Under the table, Coriolanus spread his stained linen napkin on his lap. He felt even more delinquent when he realized it was emblazoned with the capital seal. Put it here, he said with a furtive glance. Sejanus gave a look around and quickly transported the chicken and biscuits to the napkin. Coriolanus gathered it up and stuffed the whole thing in his book bag. They were not allowed to take food from the dining hall, and certainly not for tribute. But where else would he get some before the tour? Lucy Gray couldn't eat the stuff in front of cameras, but her dress had deep pockets. He resented that half of his takings would go to Jessup now, but maybe that investment would pay off when the games began. Thanks. You're quite the rebel, said Sejanus, as they carried their trays to the conveyor belt that ran to the kitchen. I'm bad news, all right, said Coriolanus. The mentors piled into a few academy vans and headed for the Capitol Arena, which had been built across the river to prevent crowds from swamping the downtown. In its day, the huge state-of-the-art amphitheater had been the site of many an exciting sporting, entertainment, or military event. High-profile executions of the enemy were staged there during the war, making it a target for the rebel bombers. While the original structure stood, it was battered and unstable now, useful only as a venue for the Hunger Games. That is such an off-putting statement. Useful only as a venue for the Hunger Games is fucking crazy. Like, damn. Okay, here we go. Where was I? The lush fields of meticulously tended grass had died from neglect. It was riddled with bomb craters, with weeds providing the only greenery on the expanse of dirt. Excuse me. What the heck? I feel like I'm making... So much air is coming out of my mouth. Rubble from the explosions, chunks of metal and stone lay everywhere, and the 15-foot wall that encircled the field was fissured and pockmarked from the shrapnel. Each year the tributes would be locked in with nothing but an arsenal of knives, swords, maces, and the like to facilitate their bloodshed while the audience watched from home. At the end of the games, the one who had managed to survive would be shipped back to their district. The bodies removed, the weapons collected, and the doors locked until the following year. No maintenance, no cleanup. Wind and rain might wash away the bloodstains, but capital hands would not. Professor Sickle, their chaperone from the outing, ordered the mentors to leave their belongings in the vans when they arrived. Coriolanus stuffed the food-filled napkin in one of his front pants pockets and kept it covered with the hem of his jacket. As they stepped from the air conditioning into the blazing sun, he saw the tribute standing in a line in handcuffs, heavily guarded by peacekeepers. The mentors were directed to take their places beside their respective tributes, who were lined up numerically, so he was near the end with Lucy Gray. Only Jessup and his mentor, Lysistrata, who couldn't tip the scales at 100 pounds, were behind him. Who couldn't tip the scales at 100? Were behind him. In front of him, Clementia's tribute, Reaper, the one who'd strangled him in the truck, stood glowering at the ground. If it came to a mentor tribute showdown, the odds were not in Coriolanus' favor. Despite her delicate appearance, Lysistrata had some grit. The daughter of the physicians who treated President Ravenstill, she'd been lucky to get a mentorship, and she'd apparently been working hard to connect with Jessup. I brought you some cream for your neck, Coriolanus heard her whisper, but you must keep it hidden. Jessup made a grunt of assent. I'll put it in your pocket when I can. The peacekeepers removed the heavy bars from the entrance. The massive door swung open, revealing a huge lobby lined with boarded-up booths and fly-specked posters, advertising events from before the war. Holding their formation, the kids followed the soldiers deep within the far side of the lobby. A bank of full-height turnstiles, each with three curved metal arms, stood covered in a thick layer of dust. They required a capital token for admittance, the same one still used for the price of a trolley fare. This entrance was for the poor people, Coriolanus thought. Or perhaps not poor. The word plebeian came to mind. That's fucking crazy. The Snow family had entered the arena at another entrance, demarcated by a velvet rope. Certainly their box could not be accessed with a trolley token. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Unlike much of the arena, it had a roof, a retractable glass window, and air conditioning that had made the hottest day comfortable. An AVOX had been assigned to them, bringing food and drinks and toys. Toys for him and Tigris. If he grew bored, he'd nap on the plush cushioned seats. Peacekeepers posted at 2 turnstiles, pumped tokens into the slots so each tribute and mentor could pass through simultaneously. At each rotation, a cheerful voice piped, "Enjoy the show!" "Can't you override the ticket barrier?" asked Professor Sickle. "We could if we had the key, but no one seems to know where it is," said a peacekeeper. "Enjoy the show," the turnstile told Coriolanus as he passed through. He gave the arm at his waist a backward push and realized that no exit was possible. His eyes traveled to the tops of the turnstiles, where iron bars filled the space to the arched doorway. He guessed the patrons of the cheap seats left the building through passages elsewhere. While that was probably seen as a plus for crowd dispersal, it did nothing to calm a jittery mentor on a questionable field trip. On the far side of the turnstiles, a squad of peacekeepers marched into a passageway, guided only by the red glow of emergency lights on the floor. On either side, smaller arches leading to different seating levels were marked. The line of tributes and mentors fell into step, flanked by tight columns of peacekeepers. As they moved into the gloom, Coriolanus took a page from Lysistrata? That's a crazy name. Lysistrata's book, and used the opportunity to slip the napkin of food into Lucy Gray's cuffed hands. It swiftly disappeared into her ruffled pocket. There. She was not going to starve to death on his watch. Her hand found his, intertwining their fingers and sending a buzz through his body at their closeness. At this small intimacy in the dark, he gave her hand a final squeeze and released it as they headed into the sunlight at the end of the passageway, where such a display would have been inexplicable. Inconceivable. No, that's actually crazy that they're already like holding hands with each other and they fucking met each other like 4 days ago. Wait, not even. Because 5 days was, 6? Fuck, maybe it was 4 days ago. I don't know. But I'm like, y'all, also, I would not be falling for somebody who was like, I don't know. I guess love, but like, damn. You fell for somebody in 3 days? Anyways, I really can't be talking, but that's besides the point. He'd been to the arena several times as a small boy, to see the circus, mostly, but also to cheer military displays under his father's command. For the past 9 years, he'd watched at least part of the games on television, but nothing prepared him for the sensation of walking out through the main gate, beneath the enormous scoreboard and onto the field. Some of the mentors and tributes gasped at the sheer size of the place and the grandeur that defied even the decay. Staring up at the towering rows of seats made him feel diminished to the point of insignificance. A raindrop in a flood, a pebble in an avalanche. The sight of the camera crews brought him back to himself, and he adjusted his face to say that nothing much really impressed a Snow. Lucy Gray, who seemed more alert and moved better without the weight of the chains, gave a wave to Lepidus Malmsey. Look, I say these names in my head most of the time when I read them, and I don't actually pronounce them. Lepidus Malmsey. But like all the reporters, he remained stony-faced and didn't engage. Their direction had been clear. Gravity and retribution were the hallmarks of the day. Satyria's use of the word tour had suggested a sightseeing excursion, and while he had not anticipated pleasure, I keep yawning. He had not expected the palpable sadness of the place either. The peacekeepers who had been flanking them spread out as their kids dutifully followed the lead squad around the inside perimeter of the oval, forming a dusty, joyless parade. Coriolanus remembered the circus performers taking the same route, riding elephants and horses, spangled and brimming with mirth. With the exception of Sejanus, probably all of his classmates would have been in the audience too. Ironically, Arachne would have been in the box adjacent to his, dressed in a sequined costume and cheering at the top of her lungs. Coriolanus surveyed the arena, looking for anything that might be an advantage for Lucy Gray. The high wall that enclosed the field, keeping the audience above the action, had some promise. The damaged surface provided hand and footholds, offering access to the seats for a nimble climber. Several of the gates, spaced symmetrically around the wall, looked compromised as well, but he was unsure what lay beyond in the tunnels. He thought those should be approached with caution. Too easy to get trapped. The stands would definitely be her best bet. If she could climb up, he made mental notes for later. Oh, would be her best bet if she could climb up. He made mental notes for later. As the line began to stretch out, he initiated a whispered conversation with Lucy Gray. It was awful this morning, seeing you like that. Well, at least they fed us first, she said. Really? How this conversation with Satyria triggered that? A couple of kids blacked out when they tried to round us up last night. I think they decided that if they want to have anyone left for their show, they're gonna have to feed us. Mostly bread and cheese. We got dinner, and breakfast too. But don't worry, I've got plenty of room left for whatever's in my pocket. She sounded more like her old self. Was that you I heard singing? Oh, yes, he admitted. They asked me to sing because they thought Arachne and I were such great friends. We weren't, and I'm embarrassed you heard me. I liked her voice. My daddy would have said it had real authority. Just didn't much care for the song, Lucy Gray replied. Thanks, that means a lot coming from you, he said. She nudged him with her elbow. I wouldn't broadcast that. Most people here think I'm lower than a snake's belly. Coriolanus shook his head and grinned. What? She said. You just have funny expressions. Not funny per se, more colorful, he told her. Well, I don't say per se much, if that's what you mean, she quipped. No, I like it. It makes the way I talk seem so stiff. What was it you called me the other day in the zoo? Something about cake, he remembered. Oh, the cake with the cream. You don't say that, she asked. Well, it's a compliment where I come from. Cake can be pretty dry, and cream's as scarce as hen's teeth. For a moment he laughed, forgetting where they were. How depressing the backdrop. For a moment, there was just her smile, the musical cadence of her voice, and the hint of flirtation. Then the world exploded. Suzanne Collins, stop killing people. I shouldn't be laughing at that. That's actually terrible. No, genuinely, I swear every chapter ends with somebody dying. Okay, I just read the first sentence. I have to keep reading. Coriolanus knew bombs, and they terrified him. Anyway, what the fuck? Okay, I thought this was like a metaphor of the world explode. Even as the impact threw him off his feet and tossed him further into the arena. His arms lifted to cover his head. When he hit the ground, he automatically flattened onto his belly, cheek pressed into the dust, one arm bent up to guard his exposed eye and ear. The first explosion, which seemed to have come from the main gate, initiated a chain of eruptions around the arena. Running was out of the question. It was all he could do to cling to the rumbling ground, hope for it to stop, and try to keep his panic in cheek. He entered what he and Tigers had nicknamed bomb time, that surreal period when moments stretched and contracted in ways that seemed to defy science. What the fuck is happening? What is happening? What? What is going on? Huh? Huh? Okay. I need to continue reading this. During the war, the capital had assigned every citizen a shelter near their residence. The Snow's magnificent building had a basement level so sturdy and spacious it accommodated not only its residents, but half the block. Unfortunately, the capital's surveillance system depended heavily on electricity. Okay, duh. With the power sketchy and the grid flickering on and off like a firefly due to rebel interference in District 5, the sirens were unreliable. They were often caught unawares, with no time to retreat to the basement. At these times, he, Tigress, and the grandmam, unless she was singing the anthem, would hide under the dining table, an impressive thing carved from a single block of marble, which sat in an interior room. Even with the absence of windows and solid rock over his head, Coriolanus's muscles always went rigid with terror when he heard the whistling of the bombs, and it would be hours before he felt he could walk right. The streets weren't safe either, nor the academy. He could be bombed anywhere, but usually he had a better placed shelter than this. Now, naked to the attack, lying in the open air, he waited for the interminable... Fuck, I don't know how to speak or read. For the interminable bomb time to end, and wondered how much damage his internal organs were incurring. No hovercraft. The realization bubbled in his brain. There had been no hovercraft. These bombs had been planted then. He could smell smoke, so some of them were probably incendiary. How? Oh my gosh, I hate that he knows so much about bombs. He pressed his daily handkerchief over his nose and mouth, squinting through the black haze thickened with dirt from the arena. He could see Lucy Gray about 15 feet away, curled up in a ball, forehead on the ground, and fingertips lodged in her ears, which was the best she could do with the cuffs on. She coughed helplessly. Cover your face, use the Cover your face, use the napkin, he called out. Sorry, my lol. She didn't look over, but must have heard, because she rolled on her side and retrieved it from her pocket. The biscuits and chicken fell on the ground as she pressed the cloth to her face. He had a vague thought this would not be conducive to her singing. Yeah. A lull fooled him into thinking the episode had ended, but just as he lifted his head, a final explosion in the stands above him demolished what had once been a snack shack. That pink spun sugar, those caramel-coated apples, and burning debris rained down on him. Something struck his head hard. The heavy weight of a beam landed diagonally across his back, pinning him to the ground. What? Stunned, Coriolanus lay almost senseless for a bit. The acrid smell of burning stung his nose, and he realized the beam was on fire. He tried to pull himself together and wriggle free, but the world swam and the peach pie turned sour in his stomach. Help, he cried. Similar pleas came from around him, but he couldn't see the injured through the cloud. Help! The fire singed his hair, and with renewed effort he tried to struggle from under the beam to no avail. A searing pain began to eat into his neck and shoulder as the horrifying realization that he was burning to death overtook him. He screamed again and again, but seemed alone in the bubble of dark smoke and flaming rubble. Then he could make out a figure rising from the inferno. Lucy Gray said his name, then snapped her head around, something out of his view catching her attention. Her feet took a few steps away from him, then she hesitated, apparently torn. Lucy Gray, he pleaded in a ragged voice, please. She gave a last look at whatever had tempted her and ran to his side. The beam shifted off his back, but then slammed down again. It rose a second time, leaving him just enough room to drag himself from beneath. She helped him to his feet, and with his arms slung across her shoulders, they limped away from the flames until they collapsed somewhere in the middle of the arena. At first, coughing and gagging required all their attention, but he slowly registered the pain in his head and the burns along his neck, back, and shoulders. Somehow his fingers were knotted in Lucy Gray's scorched shirt as if it were a lifeline. Her cuffed hands, visibly burned, curled nearby. What? The smoke settled enough that he could see the pattern the bombs had been planted in intervals around the arena, with a motherload of explosives placed at the entrance. So great was the damage there that he caught a glimpse of the street beyond and two forms fleeing the area. Was that what had given Lucy Gray pause before she came to his aid? The possibility of escape? Other tributes had surely availed themselves of the opportunity. Yes, he heard the sirens now, the shouts from the street. Medics picked their way over the rubble and ran for the wounded. It's okay, he told Lucy Gray. Help is here. Hands reached for him, settled him onto a stretcher. He released her ruffles, thinking there would be another stretcher for her. But as they carried him off, he could see a peacekeeper force her to her stomach and jam the barrel of a gun into her neck, yelling a string of profanities at her. Lucy Gray! Coriolanus cried out. No one paid attention. Who is texting me? Yo, there's some tea. Guys, okay, there's a lot going on right now. I have to finish this. No one paid attention to him. Okay, my attention has been diverted for the time being. There's some tea. I'm in a wedding that's happening in like 2-3 days. And there's like a wedding party group chat, and in the group chat, somebody said something really rude. And it was just incredibly out of touch and wild. And I was like, what? Like, it was weird. It was like, it was weird. And I was like, he's in the wedding party. I don't know. But somebody just said, they're frustrated to say the least. It's gonna take a lot to forgive them. But I low-key, okay, where is my computer? I need to figure out who actually said that because I don't have anyone's number saved. So I've been trying to like extrapolate who this person actually is. And I haven't been able to figure it out. And so somebody just said their name. I'm not gonna like expose them because what? But like for my personal understanding, when I interact with this person, I need to know who this is. And I've been going on like the website, you know how it's like RSVP websites. I've been going on that and like trying to like figure out what's going on because I was like shook. I was like when this was said, and then nobody really said anything for a minute, and then I think somebody maybe privately messaged him, and then he like I don't know. It was just really weird. It was really bizarre. I was like, it was off putting to say the least. You should be off putting. Speaking of the Hunger Games interview, Jennifer Lawrence with that one. I think he does a joke interview. Oh, I shut down my computer so that it wouldn't overheat in my backpack. Now it's taking forever for everything to load up. Come on. Okay. Okay. I need to figure out who said this. Oh my gosh, everything's taking forever to load. Lock in Wi-Fi. Okay, Wi-Fi is locked. Okay. Alright, where's the fucking wedding party? Wait, he's not in the wedding party. Huh? Wait, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 2 is 16. There's 14 people in that group chat. Y'all, I'm doing some fucking research right now. What? Guys, I'm so confused. I am so confused. Because they have a group chat for their wedding party. Yeah. Who is in this? Info. Wait. I need to see if this number's in both of them. I'm extrapolating this information. Because I don't know. Maybe this was just like groomsmen? Or like the males? Possibly? Shit. My computer isn't updating my texts. Boo. Oh, wait. I don't know if it can. Alright, well, I'm gonna end this live because we've certainly had fun. And I'm gonna go figure this out. So, bye. Thanks for joining me. If I can actually end this. This is so awkward.